get home from school, turn on my TV. Who are these friends staring right back at me? Now that we're older, why don't you come over and go back in time with me? 90s babies nostalgia.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Jessica, and this is 90s Babies Nostalgia, where two fully grown millennial women rewatch and sometimes watch for the first time iconic entertainment from the early 2000s.
Just to be clear, we are not sponsored by nor affiliated with any of the brand shows, whatever, that we are talking about. We just really like talking about TV. And today, the TV that we're talking about is actually a movie, and it is
Hocus Pocus!
Hocus. Ooh. We're mixing it up a little bit because obviously it's spooky season. It's the best season.
It's the best season. I put up my Halloween decorations. I did candy corn eye makeup. We both have the black lipstick going on. We are just fully enjoying that we get to record a couple spooky episodes for you.
Yes, if you're a YouTube person, you'll notice we're going to be wearing the same outfits in this one and our next episode because we're not going to bother changing. We are not professional YouTubers, and we are recording back to back because Hocus Pocus 2 came out, which is something that was like a fever dream for a decade or two.
Yeah.
And it finally came out. So we decided we would have to talk about the first one, being that this is 90s Babies Nostalgia, where we rewatch stuff that is classic tween TV.
Yeah.
And then our next episode, we're going to talk about the new one.
Yeah. It's very exciting.
So if you aren't sure if you should watch it, as in watch the movie, you can at least listen to our podcast first, and then you can decide. We're helping you out.
Yeah.
You know?
You also probably should just go and rewatch both of them, but also listen to both of our episodes as well.
Absolutely. So you probably know because this one is an iconic, like a cult classic of a film that is a lot of people's favorite Halloween movie.
Yes.
How do you feel about that, Jess? Would you say this is a favorite?
Well, given by the fact I texted Amanda this, but I will tell you guys, I at least have not seen this movie in 5 years. Honestly, probably more than that. I think the last time I watched it was like maybe when I still lived with my parents or was home around the fall time in college, and it happened to be on TV. This is not one that like I choose to stream every year like I know many people do. It's not my favorite Halloween. It's not my go-to. I'm not going to say not my favorite. It's not my go-to Halloween. Like if I'm going to put a Halloween movie on, I'm going to put Halloween Town on. Like I'm not putting Hocus Pocus on. How do you feel about it?
I concur.
Yeah.
I agree completely. Obviously, my one true Halloween ritual is that I have to watch Halloween Town, especially the first one, ideally the first and second one. Sometimes I can make it to the third, fuck the fourth. Although I do think I rewatched that last year or the year before just out of curiosity. Sarah Paxton and Kimberly J. Brown did not know what was happening. Disney did it. Disney pulled that shit. Anyway, Halloween Town is my number one, all of them. And Hocus Pocus I did watch last year before Disney Plus when I had to like find other means to watch most of the movies I was into. I wouldn't have bothered to seek out Hocus Pocus, but now that I have Disney Plus, it was just like an easy one to throw on. You know what I mean?
Yes. I completely understand.
But it was definitely on like the Freeform and Disney Channel replay so often that I rerun. That's the word I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
That like I do not have to pay attention to it when it's on. Like I already know what's going on, which is why it was so interesting watching it last night because I noticed a lot of stuff that I haven't necessarily noticed because when I watch it, I don't pay attention usually.
Yeah. Where I felt that I really had to pay attention because I was like, I know the general plot, but I truly did not remember specifics or like really a lot of details like just were not in my mind because it has been so long since I watched it. So I had to pay attention. And I'm someone who like I pause movies a lot, which probably annoy people, but I need to like think in my thoughts, especially when we're doing this podcast. I can't be watching the movie and writing notes at the same time. Just doesn't work for me. So I feel like I caught a lot of stuff rewatching it this time because I was really trying to like pay attention.
Yeah, this is like the first time I've paid attention, and I noticed a lot more than before.
Yeah, we're with the TV shows. I have to be honest, when we rewatch the TV shows, once I'm on season 2 and season 3, I'm not pausing it anymore. Like, I'm just letting it play in the background. Like, I know what's going on.
Honestly, I power through watching, taking notes, and like cleaning at the same time for the podcast. So
I don't know how you do that. It boggles my mind every time I think about it.
it's okay. You don't have to think about it. I was doing work while no one from work listened to this podcast. I was doing work while I finished Phil of the Future. Anyway, Hocus Pocus came out in 1993, I believe.
Yep,
Takes place in 1993.
July 26, 1993.
And directed by the one and only Mr. Kenny Ortega, who also did High School Musical, The Cheetah Girls 2, the Descendants franchise. He's also a renowned choreographer that did some Michael Jackson tours and Dirty Dancing and a bunch of other stuff. And truly, I think, just between this film and High School Musical, he never needed to do anything else. Like,
No.
I'm glad. I love Descendants, but financially, he never needed to do anything else.
No.
And I think it's important to know that Kenny Ortega directed this, and that's something that a lot of us didn't know. Like, so many people our age grew up loving this and loving High School Musical and knowing he did High School Musical, but not knowing he did this. But I feel like this shows a different side to him that's like a little more adult and very camp.
100%. And I have to be honest, until I looked up like the IMDb and the Wikipedia and different things this morning, like putting together lists, I was not aware that Kenny Ortega directed this until literally this morning. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is Mr. High School Musical and Cheetah Girls, like giving us a piece of something different. And it's interesting because this is earlier on in his career to think of then what he went on to do. It makes sense, but because Disney hires him a lot, but also I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. Like it does, as you said, show a different side to him.
Yeah. And we focus on the 3 Sanderson sisters as well as a family, but we have to point out, as you all probably know, the Sanderson sisters are played by Bette Midler, who plays Winifred Sanderson, the leader of the trio. Kathy Najimy plays like the clumsier, dorkier, but loyal sister. And Sarah Jessica Parker plays the sort of seductress bimbo sister.
Yeah.
Sarah, I should say Sarah. And Kathy Najimy's character is Mary.
Yep.
And Sarah Jessica Parker, we all know from Sex and the City. Bette Midler was the biggest name at this time when this came out, as evidenced by the fact that she gets a pre-title credit. Her name shows up before the title Hocus Pocus shows up in the movie.
Yep.
She was a huge singer and actress who came up, is a huge singer and actress who came up in the like 70s and 80s, actually in the gay bathhouse scene is what I learned last night.
Oh, interesting.
In New York City.
Would have not guessed that, but okay.
I knew she was a big fan of the queers, yeah. I say that not as a slur, I say that as a queer. I mean, you might be new to the podcast, so disclaimer. Anyway, Kathy Najimy is definitely the least known of the 3, but she fully serves, and I'll get into that more later, but she is a very solid comedic actress who's been in a lot of things. Notably was the voice of Peggy on King of the Hill. Is there anything else of hers that I should point out?
No, I think,
She was in Sister Act.
yeah. I think
She's
you
in
got it.
Wally.
Oh,
Um,
I don't know that I knew
yeah,
that she
she's
was
been in
in
a lot of
Wally.
things. You'd recognize her, but you wouldn't recognize her the way you would Bette Midler and Sarah Jessica Parker.
Yep.
Like, I always forget her name. But anyway, those are our principal cast, and then of the Sanderson sisters, and then who are our protagonists, Jessica?
Okay, I have their names. I didn't do research on what other things they have been in, so please forgive me. Max Dennison, which is the brother, is played by Omni Katz. And then the younger,
Oh, interesting name.
yep, the younger sister is Danny Dennison, and she is played by Thora Birch. We have Allison, who's like kind of, you'll see, she's involved. She's kind of like the crush. She's played by Vanessa Shaw. And then you have Billy Butcherson, which I think is very important because he shows back up in Hocus Pocus too. And he is played by Doug Jones. And then the last kind of main side character is Thackeray Binks, who's played by Sean Murray, but is voiced by, in cat form, Jason Marsden. So it's not the same actor, which I found interesting. I'm like, why didn't they just have the same person do both?
Wait, it's voiced by James Marsden?
Jason Marsden. Did I say James? I meant Jason. Sorry, guys.
Oh, okay. That's much. I don't know what you said, but I heard James Marsden and I was very confused.
I might have said that, honestly. But Jason Marsden.
But I'm not surprised to find out that it's voiced by a different person than the actor, because in the beginning, Hocus Pocus opens up in 1693 with this very dramatic pilgrimage scene of teenage Thackeray Binks running to the Sandersons' house because they can see the smoke going up and they can't find his sister Emily, who, until he sees her in a field walking towards the Sanderson house. She's being lured there, and the way that he speaks does not look like it matches with him at all.
No.
Like, his voice and his face don't match.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I also think it's because they were trying to use a little more of like the former, I don't know, would it be considered Old English? Because of the time period.
Yeah, they do this weird, like, yeah, it's a weird, like, almost British but not British accent.
Yes. Yeah, it's I think they're trying to fit in with the fact that it's the late 1600s, but yeah, it does feel weird, and it's very obviously it's being shot much later, and that's very obvious. So when they speak like that, I think with all of the characters, it doesn't fit.
Okay, so I guess getting into the plot.
Yeah.
Because I just started that. So as I said, we open up 1693. We're in Salem, Massachusetts, which is kind of important to point out because Salem witch trials, of course. I kind of was wondering the whole time we were watching this how the people of Salem feel about it, because opening scene is Thackeray running to save Emily. He doesn't get there in time. The Sanderson sisters drink her soul, which they say they need to stay young, youthful, beautiful, etc. They turn Thackeray into a cat who has to live forever. But the witches do get hanged by the townspeople, and they set a spell that they will come back when there's a full moon on Halloween and the black flame candle is lit by a virgin. And then we open to present day, which is actually 1993. And they're telling this legend in class, and everyone is so into it. And this is why I say I wonder how the people of Salem, Massachusetts actually feel about this film, is because, like, my understanding of Salem, Massachusetts from these films is that everyone is so into Halloween.
Yeah, it makes it seem like the entire town's identity is Halloween. Like, and it just feels, you're like,
And the Sanderson sisters.
Yes. Yeah, it's a big part of it.
Do you have any notes about that opening scene?
Not really, no. I have more, not of that opening scene.
You
Just
have no
that,
notes?
well, I do have notes. I've thoughts. I truly didn't remember how, like, creepy and evil the Sanderson sisters were. And then when you watch that opening scene, you're like, oh yeah, this is what this movie is. Like, and it just kind of surprises you that it's like a children's movie because
That, like,
it's about them
hmm?
like killing children. And it's a
Yeah.
children's movie. Like, you're like, this is really evil and kind of like fucked up.
Yeah, it's very dark of a topic, and yet somehow Kenny made it very camp. I think it helps that he had Bette Midler. You're automatically very introduced to who the Sanderson sisters are characteristically, because we've got, like, the way that they behave. Mary is like, how, like, she's making the potion and she's like, I see that Sister Sarah isn't doing anything, and Winnie's like, she lured the children here, she did her job.
Yeah.
And, like, you can see Winnie's the boss and Mary is sort of the lackey, and Sarah's like talking about boys and how pretty she wants to be.
Yeah. Also,
They let themselves get very old in the beginning.
yes, they let themselves get very old. Like, what would you say, late 50s, early 60s is what they look like?
Oh. No, they look a lot older than that.
You think?
They look haggish. They've got, like, wiry white hair and, like, tons of wrinkles everywhere.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, they let themselves get very, very old. And this is how we see them kind of transform into what I would say people like. When you think of the Sanderson sisters in Hocus Pocus, you think of their younger versions and not the opening scene version of them. Also, I forgot how, like, slightly sexually inappropriate Sarah was, because at the beginning, I guess, yeah, it is in the opening scene where she's like, let's hang him on a hook and play with him. And you're like, oh, that makes me uncomfortable. You know?
Yes, she is aggressively into boys. Also, you get this iconic start where Winifred opens up the windows, and she goes, oh, look, another glorious morning. Makes me sick.
Yeah.
Which I think is just very, like, relatable. Every morning I wake up with my east-facing window, and I'm like, oh, look, it's beautiful outside. Disgusting. But I was really surprised at how old they let themselves get based on the premise of the films, and also I did not realize that they put bits of their own tongues in the potion.
Oh.
Also, why is Emily just sitting there? Emily doesn't move. She doesn't try to leave at all. She literally just sits there.
Well, I think that's something that, like, in both movies, I'll probably spend a fair amount of time talking about, because I think it's very fascinating. But the way that the sisters are able to, like, send people into a trance, and I think this is the first time that we see it, where, like, they, with their singing voices, they're able to truly just, like, even though crazy things are happening and people are doing evil things, they are able to send humans into this trance. And I think Emily is in a trance, and that's the state we're seeing her in. And this is the first time that we kind of see the Sanderson sisters' powers or ability to do that, because she's not fighting it. She's just sitting there. I don't even remember if she's tied up.
Yeah. No, I forget that she's under a trance, because every other time we see a kid sitting in that chair, they are fighting it because they're not under a trance.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should move on to the 93 kids, though.
Yeah.
We've got Max and Danny. Like we said, the town of Salem is obsessed with Halloween, and Max is a recent California transplant, and he's, like, too cool for school, and he's like, it's all a bunch of hocus pocus, and, like, questioning it in front of the class. And Allison is in his class and she's like, this is real Salem history, and shows him up on like, he's like, we all know Halloween was made by the candy companies, and she was like, actually it comes from All Hallows Eve, the night when the spirits of the dead roam the living.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, whoa, cheering her on, and he fully stands up in the middle of class and gives her his number. It's like very impressive that he has
The balls.
the bravery to do that
And the confidence.
in the middle of class.
Yeah.
In front of the
Also,
teacher.
he didn't put
Class
in,
is not over.
he didn't put an area code, which I know is a small thing, guys, but it really threw me off. I was like, well, how is she supposed to call you without an area code? But I guess it's all home phones. They don't have cell phones at this point, so the area code is wherever they live. So never mind. Disregard that comment. But I thought it was interesting that it was just 7 numbers.
And she gives it back to him, which is funny. Yeah. And then where do we want to go from this?
Well, I also just want to comment on the fact that, like, Max isn't upset and he doesn't hate Salem because his parents up and moved him and he has to make new friends and he's not on the West Coast anymore and it's a huge change and all of these things. He truly is just upset that everyone is obsessed with Halloween, and it's a very weird that that's why he doesn't like moving there. Like, I'm like, you could have 10 reasons.
Well, he's also, I think he has a couple more reasons, because people, I mean, we've got the 2 bullies who we see when Max is on his way home from school that day. It is Halloween. He was riding through a graveyard that doesn't even have a bike path. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And they just stop him and they call him Hollywood and they steal his sneakers. And his teacher also was like, do you want to educate us with your tie-dye California perspective? So I think he feels othered. I think that's part of why he doesn't like it. And also they stole his sneakers.
That's fair. That's very fair.
But he has the nicest fucking room. It's so big.
I have a question. This is just me getting caught up in the little details. There's this staircase. I do agree his room is so nice, and like, you're no way your room in California, unless your parents were very, very rich, looked like that. So probably a bonus for you. But there's this staircase in his room that leads to like an indoor balcony sort of situation, and I don't understand. What's the point? Why is that staircase there?
It's a loft.
But it's like small, or at least what we see of it is small. It's like the size of an extended balcony. And I just found it
I'm
strange.
into it. I see it as a little loft you could hang out in.
You could turn it into a reading room. That might be really cute.
I would absolutely turn it into a reading nook. Oh my gosh.
I know. I love the idea of having a home where I could have a reading nook. Now we're getting off topic, but guys, these are the important things. So while they're at home, we meet Danny, and you kind of get the scene where Max doesn't want to take Danny out trick-or-treating, but the parents are going to this Halloween party, and so he has to take her trick-or-treating, and you kind of see this like battle between the 2 of them, but he ends up agreeing and taking her trick-or-treating. They end up just like, they're trick-or-treating, and then they like walk up to a house that's like, they literally open the door and just go inside because that's normal. And it's Allison's house. And
it's a beautiful, massive house.
Huge.
Also, can I say briefly, the absolute drama of these kids, they are the most dramatic kids. Danny is the sassiest kid ever, and they let you know that right off the bat. She is milking every little bit of having to take her trick-or-treating, and then they run into the bullies who stole his shoes, and they're trying to steal candy, and she says, drop dead, moron. And when they meet Allison, she tells Allison that she has a really nice dress, but she could never wear that kind of thing because she doesn't have any, what does Max call them? Yabos. Max really likes your yabos.
Yeah.
Why does Danny know that? Danny's like 8.
Yeah. I forgot about that scene.
I could not. But it's when they're at Allison's house and they're talking to Allison that they're mentioning the Halloween and the Sanderson sisters stuff, and she mentions that her mom used to run the museum of the Sanderson sisters' house, and so she still has access and they could take them. She could take them, and Danny's like, no, that sounds terrifying. And Max is like wanting to impress Allison, so he's like, yeah,
Yeah.
let's go. Sounds like a great idea, right?
Because he still at this point doesn't believe it. Like, yes, he's trying to impress her, but he also doesn't. He's not fully all in. He's like, there's no way, like, any of this is real. It's all just a story. Like, let's go visit it. Plus, I get to hang out with my crush.
Yeah, he's really just trying to spend time with Allison.
100%.
And this is where he says the line, it's just a bunch of hocus pocus, when they're at the house, at the Sanderson house, I believe. So what happens at the house, Jessica?
So they go into the house. They're kind of looking around. And the big thing that happens is they see the black flame candle, and both Danny and Allison are kind of getting spooked, and they both kind of want to leave. And Max still is like, no, come on, this is fun. He's like, let's light the black flame candle. So he goes to light it, and he gets attacked by Thackeray Binks, the cat. But he does end up getting back up and lighting the candle. And then you have this moment where the Sanderson sisters come back. And so this is kind of the moment where, the story kind of shifts. Like, now Max is like, oh crap, like, this is real.
And I gotta ask, why does Winifred look like she got a Queen Elizabeth costume and a Party City witch's costume? The costumes are not giving. The makeup is not giving. It's a lot. She's got these like orange and black striped tights with these weird elf looking shoes, and she was wearing those when she was hanged in the beginning when they were living with the Pilgrims, and it's like very clearly shiny polyester.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. I just think it's funny. I didn't write down the name of the specific award, but like, we'll get into it later, but this movie did not really win a ton of awards when it came out. The only award it did win was a costume award. So you saying that cracks me up.
Oh my god, I actually had so many issues with the costumes.
Yeah. But like, that's the award it won, was like great costumes. It's like, were they?
I also never realized that Mary is like part dog.
Oh yeah, she barks all the time.
Yeah, she does this sniffing thing where she's like, I smell a child, and she can kind of tell how old and what gender. And that I knew, but then she also barks.
Mm-hmm.
So what's up with that?
I don't know. I kind of like it though. She gives me the most like chaotic energy of the three of them, which I appreciate. Because she's kind of unhinged. They're all unhinged, but she's like a little extra unhinged, I feel.
Yeah, I really feel like she's a real one who like keeps them together and keeps the movie going.
Oh, 100%. But all of them having their varied personalities, I think, is what like makes them so iconic as a Sanderson sister. But yeah, Mary, I feel like keeps them on track.
So we get the Sanderson sisters come back. The kids have a little tussle. They're trying to kill him or whatever. They can't. They get out. And Max says, you have made an enemy of the great and powerful Max, and now comes the reign of death, and sets off the sprinkler system. Because they've been gone for 300 years. They don't know what anything is. So last time they were alive, we were shitting in buckets. So they fall for it, and he runs out, and they get very upset. And thus begins sort of the main plot of the movie, where the Sanderson sisters are chasing them and trying to get a kid to eat because they have to consume a child's soul by the end of the night. The black flame candle will only be lit for the night of Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
And if the sun rises and they haven't consumed a child's soul, then they will perish.
Yeah, the only way for them to break the curse of coming back for one night is to do this spell where they consume a child's soul and it will make them look younger.
Mm-hmm. So Max and Allison and Danny leave, and the sisters end up on a bus, which they are very confused by. Well, they fly first, right?
They fly first because they were at their house, so they had their witch's brooms, so they fly.
Oh, wait, I remembered an essential point. When Max leaves, he steals the book, and that's why they're chasing the kids.
Yes.
Winnie has this all-powerful dark magic book, and they need it in order to know what the potion and spell is to consume the children. So Max runs off with it.
Yes. Also, at some point in this whole chasing scene, they end up at a graveyard, and Winnie casts a spell and makes her old lover, Billy Butcherson, come back to life.
And before she does that, the kids also went through the graveyard, and Binks was like telling the kids, you need to know what you're dealing with. This guy, Billy Butcherson, was Winifred's lover, but then he cheated on her with her sister Sarah, and so she killed him and sewed his mouth shut. She poisoned him and sewed his mouth shut, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. It's an important thing to note, oddly. They awaken Billy. They fly off at some point.
Mm-hmm.
They take a bus at some point. They don't know what it is, but the bus driver is flirting with them and has Sarah on his lap.
Yeah.
They
She's like driving the bus, which seems like really unsafe because like she's not from a time when cars were a thing, and now she's just sitting on his lap driving the bus.
They also end up they're like walking around the town, and they see that it's kids are trick-or-treating and dressed up in costumes, and at first they thought that they were actually like ghouls and goblins, and then they realize that they are kids and this is a holiday for candy, and they end up at Satan's house, which is a very odd scene and a particular choice that Kenny made.
Yeah. Yes. It's this whole scene where they're calling the devil, the gentleman dressed up as Satan, the devil, their master, and they're worshiping him, and they're asking to dance with him. It has a lot of campness and equal
he just
amounts.
Invites them into his house.
He doesn't ask any questions, and I'm like, don't you find this weird that they're like calling you master?
And that they're like grown women?
Yes. And it's while they're in the house, I'm pretty sure, it's while they're in the house that a bunch of kids steal their brooms.
It is, yes.
Mm-hmm. So they kind of get kicked out because the wife of this person dressed up as Satan gets very appropriately jealous and is like, these women need to leave our house right now. Like, what the hell do you think you're doing? So then they end up back on the street.
And while this is happening, our protagonists are being very realistically suburban kids, where they're just like running through town trying to find help, and they tell this guy that they think is a cop, but he's actually just a guy in a costume as a cop, that they got that the Sanders sisters are awake, and he's like, you lit the black flame candle, you're a virgin? Really? There's a lot of talk about virginity in this film, but we'll get into that more later, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then he's not a cop, and he's like, just get out of here. And then they run to where their parents are at a Halloween costume party. So I just feel like it's very realistic. Like, part of the charm of this is like early 90s cinematography. It's clearly a low budget. It looks realistic. The houses are not perfect. It's very suburban, and the things that the kids do are like, yeah, if you're in trouble, you run and try to find the cops or your parents, right?
Yep. And they do go and find their parents at this party. And they try to tell their parents what's happening. And their parents, frankly, don't give a shit. They're there to have a good time at this party. And they just cannot be bothered that their children are telling them some story. They just don't believe them. They're not paying attention. They just don't care, frankly. And so the Sanderson sisters show up at this party because they're still trying to get the spell book because they can't consume the soul of children without this spell book. So they show up, and this is where we see, and it's a little subdued and subtle, but this is where we see the Sanderson sisters get on stage and sing a song, and they kind of send everyone into a trance.
Did you just say it's subdued and subtle?
Yeah, I do think it was. You didn't think it was? Like, it's a big song, obviously, but I just...
It's a big song, and it's called I Put a Spell on You.
Yeah, okay.
And they say, and now you're mine.
Okay, but I guess the reason I say that is more the reactions of the parents. Like, when I grew up watching this, I didn't realize that they were sending them into a trance. I think...
Really?
No, I did not. And I think watching the new one, we'll get into it, but it's a lot more obvious in the second one than in this first film, I feel. Like, the song lyrics, but I personally don't think their reactions were very, like, I don't know. I don't know what more to say other than that I did not connect those dots as a child.
Okay, well, this is an iconic moment for the film.
Yeah.
Max is up on stage and he's like, the Sanderson sisters are back. It's real. You have to believe me. And the guy that's leading the band is like, really, dude, I was in the middle of a set. And then the spotlight finds the Sanderson sisters. They get up on stage. They perform I Put a Spell on You. Bette Midler really performs I Put a Spell on You because you see Sarah and Mary singing backup, but it's so clearly not their voices singing backup.
Yes.
And they have a whole performance, and then in the background they do the little and like do a little funky non-English chant, which the crowd repeats, and then at the end Winnie says, like, and now you shall dance till you die, and so that's the spell. So I always got that, but just didn't. So maybe it's subtle. Maybe it's not. Tell me what you think. Mm-hmm. Either way, it's a big performance number that is like quintessential to the film.
Yes. Extremely iconic.
Uh-huh. And Max and them are running around like, don't listen to that. Don't listen to that. But the parents don't believe them. And so the kids run out, leave their parents to dance till they die, and they run to the school.
Yes.
I don't know why they run to the school, but they run to the school.
And the sisters follow them to the school. Is this the point where they get the new brooms?
I think they get the new brooms from the school.
Okay. So they end up at the school because that's where the kids go, and so the sisters, naturally, trying to get their spell book, follow them to the school. And then there's this room. Was it the furnace room? I don't really know what this room is. I have a lot of questions. But they end up locking the sisters inside this room and like setting it on fire.
So they put a boombox in the kiln, the school's kiln, in like it'd be in, it's a pottery kiln basically.
Yeah.
So they put a boombox in it that's playing a French tape, and it lures the sisters in because they hear the talking and they think someone's there.
Yeah.
And then the kids slam the door shut and turn it on, so they're burning. And you see, I have a huge question about this scene because you see the the green smoke go up into the air and they think they've done it. They all cheer. They go home. Allison spends the night sleeping on Max, whatever.
Yeah.
But then you see the smoke come back in and the door open.
Uh-huh.
And the sister's standing there. And Winnie says, "Hello, I want my book. Bonjour, bonjour, je vous vois livre."
Yeah.
Which is like, she was listening to the tape that she learned how to say that in
Yeah.
French, which is so funny. But I don't know why this happens, why they burn and then come back. Is it like the black flame candle brings them back because it's still burning?
Yeah, I don't know. Or
Like,
they're not able to be burned alive, but that also doesn't make sense. So yeah, that scene is very confusing. Maybe they're like the black flame candle's power or strength is stronger than that of the kiln burning them. It's very interesting.
yeah, maybe they're like invincible for that night. But also, my other question is, how did they open the door? Because the kiln door should never just automatically open when it's done. It has to be opened from the outside.
Well, they're powerful and they have magic. But then when they were locked in it, why weren't they able to get out at the beginning? Also confusing.
At one point, I wrote a note, "These fuckers deserve to die." But hilariously, it's not about the Sanderson sisters.
Oh.
So I'm pretty sure it's when they are at the school that they get the new brooms. They end up with a broom, a mop, and a vacuum. They fly back to their home. But at some point, I don't remember where. Do you remember where they run into the bullies that we saw earlier?
I don't remember where, but I do know that happens.
I literally just watched this last night. And they put the bullies in these giant cages that are hanging from the ceiling, and this is where I wrote, "These fuckers deserve to die." It was about them.
Yes. Yeah, and I do think it happens at this point because I think you are right. This is when it happens because Danny, Allison, and Max are still all sleeping. And the Sanderson sisters get out of the kiln and they're still going to look for the book, but they decide to go back to the house to start preparing and getting things ready while Winnie goes looks for the book. So you think the bullies deserve to die?
I do.
Okay. It's fair.
I think they're awful. I want to know how the kids naturally wake up at 5 a.m. Allison and Max just wake up. It's weird. Who wakes up at 5 a.m.? She's like, "My dad's gonna kill me." They run off. Also, Allison's hair is really shiny. I wrote a note about that at this point because she wakes up at 5 a.m. and it's just like glossy and perfect.
Yeah.
I would like to know what products she uses.
Yeah, as it is, you know. You just wake up in the morning and your hair just looks glistening and beautiful like you just left the salon at age 13.
Yeah. And then, do they... Oh, you know what happens is before or after they wake up? I think it's before they wake up. Before they wake up, Allison and Max... No, what am I saying before they wake up? After they wake up, Allison and Max are talking about how sad it is that Binks is going to be a cat that lives forever. And they're like, maybe something in this book will help. And they're like, Binks said not to open the book. And they're like, well, the Sandersons are dead, so what does it matter? So they open the book, and this like giant beam of light shoots up into the air that tells the sisters where the book is. And Max and Allison just like don't notice as they're looking through the book that giant beam of light is in their faces.
Correct.
And then Binks jumps at them and yells that not to have it open, but it's too late.
And so then Winnie comes and gets the book, but now I don't remember. Somehow they end up in a car driving.
I think they take the book and Danny.
Oh yeah, they take Danny with them.
They take the book and Danny, and so Allison and Max drive to the Sandersons' house, and they're like, we could eat the boys, but like Danny's young, so she's better. We're gonna get more youth out of her. And Danny sass, undeterred. She shouts, "You're the ugliest thing that's ever lived, and you know it!"
Yeah.
At Winifred, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Also, Max shows up to save her, and he is the king of saying stupid shit confidently because they're like, well, they turn to dust when the sun rises. So he is like, I know something you don't know, daylight savings. And then Allison turns on the headlights and they're all like, ah, we're dying. I'm like, that's not how daylight savings works, bro. But
It's not.
he knows that, but they don't
Yeah.
know that.
It does show you that, like, confidence can get you really far in life. Because he just says
I
things
really feel like that.
confidently, and people fucking believe him.
And then they're driving off in the car. They leave the two boys hanging in the cages, which, again, these fuckers deserve to die.
They get Danny
I
back.
should really not say that so often. They get Danny back, but they leave the boys in the cages. They're driving.
They think about it. They're like, should we try to save the boys?
Sandersons are flying. Are you good? Are you good?
I'm good. I was
Okay.
saying they did ponder getting the boys back. They were like, should we try to save the boys? And then they're like, fuck it. It's going to take too much time.
Yes. So they chose not to.
Mm-hmm.
And another great line, Winnie is flying next to the driver and she says, pull over, let me see your driver's permit. She wouldn't even know the phrase pull over necessarily, and she definitely wouldn't know what a driver's permit is.
Very true.
Yeah.
I think they pick and choose when they want to play into them not knowing what things are, like the bus scene and stuff like that, versus like having them have lines where you're like, this doesn't make sense if they've been like dead for 300 years.
Yeah, but I think that that's the charm of the film, and what makes it comedic is that it's about, yes, these witches that suck the souls out of children, but them being these powerful, dangerous witches alive 300 years later and not knowing what anything is makes them absolutely ridiculous.
1,000%.
So, like, yeah. And then they end up somehow, Billy ends up catching them.
Mm-hmm.
They're like back in the graveyard. Oh, they end up back in the graveyard because the witches can't go on hollow ground, sacred ground.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, they can't go on hollow ground. They also can't go on sacred ground.
And Allison took salt from their house because she was like, you make a ring of salt to protect yourself. And so they put Danny in Billy's old grave and put a ring of salt around it.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, this is the part of the movie where I start to like lose focus.
Sure. Well, this is right at the end.
This is just, I feel like this movie goes on for so long. And this is always the part that I forget happens. The salt should not have worked this well. It's a lot.
Well, they end up getting Danny anyway.
I know, but that's because she leaves the salt to get Billy's head back for him. Which, by the way, when they Billy undoes his own mouth and he shouts at Winifred, "Wench, trollop, you buck-toothed mop-riding firefly from hell."
It's a very accurate description. I don't have a lot of specifics here, but they end up getting a hold of Danny because she leaves. And does this all happen in the graveyard, or do they somehow end up back at the house?
No, okay, so in the graveyard, while they've got Danny. No. Okay, they've got a vial of the potion.
Yes.
Winifred is trying to force Danny to drink it.
Yes.
She's got Danny, and somehow Max gets the potion, and he's like, you touch my sister, I'll destroy the potion. And she's like, you destroy the potion, I'll kill your sister. And so he drinks the potion, and he's like, you're gonna have to take me instead. And then Winifred is holding him up, and she's drinking his soul, and the sun comes up, and she turns into a statue, and her sisters shatter into dust, and then her statue shatters into dust. Okay, the statue is kind of epic, but I also don't understand why Winifred gets to be a statue and then dust, and the sisters only get the dust. Like, seems a little unfair to me.
Well,
Seems a little homophobic. I don't know why, because I think they're all gay, but seems a little homophobic.
no, I disagree, because I feel like Winifred is the witch and the sisters are her coven. So of course she gets to turn into a statue because she's the more powerful one.
Okay, Mary can smell people and tell how old they are, and Sarah can ride on a broom and sing songs that bring children to their house. So I feel like they're all witches.
Well, yes, I agree. I think they all are, but I think that, like, Winnie is head witch. You know?
Okay, yeah, she is.
Yeah, she is.
She is. And then when they turn into dust, Binks dies, and then we see his ghost, and he's off to go find Emily, and Emily's like, Thackeray, what took you so long? And he says, I'm sorry, Emily, I had to wait 300 years for a virgin to light a candle.
Yeah.
And that's the last line of the movie officially.
Yep.
So, since I've seen this recently, Jess, how does this hold up for you?
It is, I have to say, way creepier than I remember, way darker than I remember. Even at one point, so I watched this movie with my younger sibling because they're staying with me right now, and my husband had walked out during one scene, and he was like, the sisters are evil? And we were like, yeah, of course they're evil. What the hell are you talking about? But he even didn't remember them being evil. I remembered them being evil, but it is a lot darker than I had remembered, because in my head it's this children's movie, and I would argue maybe it's not a children's movie. It's just a movie that appeared on, that Disney did, but it definitely has a lot going for the adults, and it definitely gives you like Halloween vibes. I think it holds up pretty well. It's still not my favorite. I would still watch Halloween Town, but it's good.
Yeah, I think it's towing a very specific line that not a lot of Halloween movies do. They're usually scary ones made for adults, or they're like Halloween Town and Twitches, which are DCOMs, and they're like cozy Halloween movies, I would classify them as.
Yeah.
And this is sort of a weird line where it very much has adult humor. There is so much talk about virginity. It's disturbing. It's also very camp, which is the thing I didn't realize really before. It is so camp. Just like the sisters, what I think part of what resonates with the kids and why we remember them more, even though they're evil and literally eat children, is that they're so over the top and such characters, and they're like, these women are fully committed into these figures, which is great because Bette to an extent, but like Sarah Jessica Parker is like nothing like we've seen her in anything else.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily consider her like an incredible actress, but she really like sinks into this role.
Yes. They really own their characters in everything they do, and even like subtle movements in the way that they this is not a movie which relies on great writing. It really relies on great characterization, which all three of the Sanderson sisters do so well, and they own it.
Yeah. So I think it's getting back to my point. It's like walking this very fine line where it's the writing is maybe more for adults, but the performances are maybe more for children. So it becomes like permissible for both. But it is like a scary premise, but somehow you just like overlook it.
Yeah, but rewatching it, I was like, God, this is fucked up. They're just trying to like eat and kill children, and we're just like sitting here watching this.
I do have a question for you, Jess.
Yeah.
Do we think that it's poor representation of adult females that their one priority is to eat children for their youth and beauty? that like they're really hyper focused on how they look.
I didn't give this thought. I might get hate for saying this, and I don't care. It might be poor representation, but I think it's accurate representation. And I think a lot of it,
that's fine.
like a lot of it, right, is societal standards and stuff that like women need to look beautiful and young, and especially like as witches that are exiled and they live in the woods and things like this, it makes sense that their priority would be holding on to their youthfulness.
Mm-hmm. And you get more insight into this in the second one. Little spoiler, but well, that'll be a whole big spoiler, but you get more insight into why this is in the second one.
Yeah.
But there is definitely like that Puritan patriarchal standard put upon them anyway. So I would agree. And also like they're evil witches that eat children, so I think it's okay what their motives are.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, for the wrap up, I did want to note, so the budget for this movie was 28 mil and the box office was 45, just over 45, 45.4. So, even though there was a small profit margin, that is considered a box office loss. And so this movie wasn't well received when it first came out, which I found fascinating because we all see it as like a cult classic because that's truly what it's turned into. But it was thanks to it being on reruns and playing every year at Halloween and being on Freeform that it turned into this cult classic. It was not immediately loved. It was not loved by the critics. It got very poor ratings. I think 39% on Rotten Tomatoes and like a 3.9 or 4.2 by the critics on IMDb. So it was not loved. And then as we got, 10 years removed, 15 years removed, 20 years removed, there were anniversary parties and festivals, and Disney started incorporating the Sanderson sisters as part of their live acts and decorations during Halloween time at Disneyland and Disney World, and it turned into this like movie that we all just like really, really loved to watch. And I just found it interesting that it was like this slow progression, which it coming out in 1993, like I didn't know that ahead of literally rewatching it this week.
This movie is literally older than us.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it feels mentally like a TV movie, but watching it, you can tell from the way it's filmed that this was a theatrical release.
100%.
Which is not my perception because culturally it's done a lot better on TV.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I also just have a couple small notes. So the producer David Kirshner is actually the one who came up with the film and helped sell it to eventually Disney, but he also tried to sell it to Steven Spielberg and to different people. But he and his daughters were sitting outside, and his neighbor's black cat kind of strayed into their front yard, and they had a conversation with his daughters, and he kind of made up the story in his head how this black cat was once a boy that was changed into a feline 300 years ago by witches, and that's kind of what started the idea for the story, which I found very interesting. That people can just take this small, something happens in their creatives just blow my mind because it's something so small that other people would consider insignificant. He turned into this huge story that's now a very successful movie that has had a second movie made almost 30 years later. It's just very cool. And when this movie first came out, the working title was Disney's Halloween's House. Not when it first came out, when it was first being worked, its title was Disney's Halloween House, and it was much scarier and much darker, and then they kind of turned it into more of a camp film as Amanda mentioned.
That's a terrible title.
Disney's Halloween house, yeah, it's horrible. I'm glad they changed it to Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with the film. And it's just a really bad title, even if the film was about that.
Agreed.
And I think that what you were talking about of how it wasn't well received at first, but it grew into this cult classic that we now perceive as a mainstream success is why it got a sequel so much later after the original, right? Is because people, it's like I said in the beginning, it's been like this fever dream that we would get a sequel, but that was really like our generation who was born when this movie first came out.
Yes. Well, and what I was reading is really it reached peak popularity about 15 to 20 years after it released, which is very interesting because it makes sense that we didn't get a sequel until almost 30 years later because it didn't reach peak popularity until 20 years later. It's cool. I don't think all films take that trajectory, and I think it shows that like what media and like now streaming services and reruns and all of these things can do for movies that maybe didn't have the best debut, but were still great films. They just maybe needed to be shown in a different light, and kind of the change in technology and reruns on TV, which then turned into streaming services and everything we have now, kind of allowed for this sequel to happen.
I have one final question for you.
Yes.
What do you think happened to the boys that were locked up in the Sandersons' house?
Oh, I have
In
no
the
idea.
cages.
I have no idea. They're
Just like use your imagination.
well, they're too dumb to get out, right? Like, I feel like either they stayed there or you know what? Which I guess they didn't show us and we saw. I was going to say, I feel like Binks would try to rescue them, but we saw Binks turn back into human.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think happened to them?
Realistically, I think Allison told her mom or something. I think someone told a parent that went and got them.
Ugh, it's boring, but yeah.
I know. But I like to think that they were up there for a couple of days first. I will say, as stupid as they are, there was a point where they were almost done with the potion, the Sandersons, and they couldn't figure out what the last thing was. And they were like, chung? And like, which is for tongue. They were trying to remember the word. And also another dog-like thing. Maybe it's dog-like. I don't know. Mary has very good memory. But the boys that were up in the cages, they were like, tongue. Like they knew that it was tongue. They could figure that much out. The Sandersons could not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a good movie. It's always going to be an easy watch. I don't think I'm ever going to watch it again to this extent of paying attention. But I will always happily have it on.
Mm-hmm. It's a good, like, if you're decorating your house or you just want Halloween vibes, put it on in the background.
But that's it, I think.
Yeah. If you want to give us a follow, which you should, please head over to our Instagram, 90s Babies Nostalgia. Spell out the word 90s. Our YouTube is also the same if you want to watch this episode and see our faces and spooky outfits that we did for you. Please rate and review. It really helps us. Spotify allows you to rate and review now, so you have no excuse. Whether you do Spotify or Apple to listen to your podcast, please rate and review. 5 stars, please.
And let us know what your favorite Halloween movie is. How, like, I'm sure we're going to get dragged for not loving Hocus Pocus the way everyone else does, but, like, drag us. Like, I'm good with that. Let us know what you love about this film, why it's so special to you, or if you also agree that, like, it's good, it's solid, but it's not a favorite. We want to know.
And if your favorite isn't Halloween Town or isn't Hocus Pocus and it's a different DCOM or a different popular Halloween movie, let us know what that is. Maybe we're missing out on some good Halloween movies.
And And now we are going to record Hocus Pocus 2, which will come out shortly after this one. So be sure you tune in for that because you're going to want to know what it's like. And you maybe don't want to have to sit down and watch it. So listen. Okay? Thanks. Thanks for listening.
Bye.